1935, 36, 37, and then they started moving them out gradually. So I mean, they had 2 decades to prepare.
Wow.
And then I mean, the story of how the Supreme Court happened is the government wanted to wrap around the canal and take the land that was later given to the Chateau Laurier. When the Chateau Laurier went in there, being built across the street from the train station, then there was, I guess, a private sector piece that was blocking that natural expansion of the government. So they went the other way. They went west.
Okay, yeah.
And so the expansion of the parliamentary precinct started going west, so west of Bank, and then progressively reaching what would have been the connection to Lebreton Flats. When you got to Bank Street along Wellington, going west, it was all industrial. It was all neighborhood. I mean, the elegant part of Wellington just kind of stopped at Bank Street. And
you certainly see that in the photos in the book.
You see it in the photos. I mean, you see some of the pictures of what Wellington used to be, and it's hard to imagine that that's now one of the most elegant avenues in North America. And I look at those pictures with also a little bit of a pinch of regret, because I think that we've demolished maybe more than we might have or should have. The expansion westward of the parliamentary precinct, of course, is understandable. I mean, the country's growing and it needs more institutions, and it's normal to have a noble, majestic avenue in a city like ours. At the same time, I think we made a lot of clear-cut bulldozing in the name of that, which today I think we'd be more sensitive.
They went really hard, and like you said, a lot of it was to do with the industry. There was a lot of a lot of it was the wires. Greber hated the wires. He didn't like the smoke and the fumes from the industry. But you make a great point. It wasn't just dirty industry. You can create small industrial places that are not, that would get private sector work in there.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, you put yourself in the shoes of people back in 1938, and probably a lot of people felt ashamed of Ottawa because it's supposed to be the capital. It's supposed to look nice. It's supposed to look majestic. And there's these, smokestacks belching fumes right next to Parliament, and it smells. But those were people's jobs too. And what the government did as a result of the Greber plan is they said, well, forget all that industry. You're just going to be the nation's capital. And you would never get away with that today. You don't take a big city and eviscerate its economic base and just promise everybody that you'll be bureaucrats. You just don't do that, because then we're sitting here all these years later, and every time the government moves jobs out of Ottawa for electoral reasons or for favoritism or for partisan reasons, or cuts jobs, well, we're left to wonder what happened with the economic base that same government bulldozed. And I think it's a fair point for us to ask ourselves the question. I mean, there's only so much of a city that you want to touch, of its base, of its soul, of its organic development as a human community. You're not just meant to be a bunch of bureaucrats sitting there in a museum. This is a living organism. It's a breathing, living organism, and a city has these things as part of what it is. And there are industrial cities that are national capitals. Think of London. I mean, it's an industrial city if there's ever been one. And it doesn't stop it from being nice. It doesn't stop it from being majestic.
It gives it character.
But it has industry. And it's a working city. Yeah. And in a city that's representative of its country. I mean, this city was built on rail and industry. And what did the Greber plan take out? Rail and industry. Yeah. So how representative are we as a national capital of the rest of the country if we lose the very things that made it? So these are things that, with the hindsight of time, you ask yourself, I mean, would we do the same today? Absolutely not. You would never get away with it.
No. And like I was saying earlier, I didn't live at the time, but the invention of cars and automobile and ease of getting around as opposed to the horses and streetcars, that must, who knows, it created so many options for people that I think that's where this plan, they had no idea
well,
what was going to happen. And obviously that's true. But they thought cars were the greatest thing ever.
And I think if you look at it from the eyes of people in 1938, which is maybe, the tail end of the Depression, where people can't really afford anything, and we're just 1 year away from World War II, so a lot of sacrifices and husbands leaving their wives to go to war and all that sort of thing. And you come back after the war and we won, and it's time to turn the page on the old world, and it's time to turn the page on everything that's obsolete. And it's a brave new world, and all these technological advances are like toys. We have no idea where it's going to lead us. We just want it because, hey, I mean, we paid a high price of, we sacrificed a lot during the war and during the Depression, and, it's time to take it easy and relax and enjoy ourselves. And I think there's no way to criticize that. It was just a normal response, a normal reaction. At the same time, when you look at the way that cars have been accommodated, you can see how scared people were of them at the same time. Because they're 2 tons of metal going fast, really close to people walking around on the street. So they said, okay, well, we want our cars, we want to go fast, but we don't want to hit anybody, we don't want to kill anybody, so we need to separate everything. We need to make sure that the cars can go fast and that they don't kill anybody. And so it leads to spreading things out and separating things in the city and setting it up so that eventually, when you keep doing that incrementally, you have no choice but to have a car.
Yeah.
And you've suppressed the ability for people to have other options than to get into a car. And that's where we're finding ourselves today, is that after 65 years of doing things that way in the city, you are still finding that there's a want, a human need for public space, for connections, for being in a crowd, for being part of something where you don't feel by yourself. Right?
Absolutely.
You feel yourself in a sidewalk at the end of a show at night on a Saturday with a river of people walking up and down and lights blinking on a street. That's a completely different feeling than finding yourself in a parking lot, getting in your case in your car and driving home. And that's 2 very different things.
Yeah, not community, and I'm really happy that we're starting to make the turn back towards the complete streets and the whole movement of community. And we're seeing that in Ottawa incredibly. Right. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll talk a bit more about the book, about Greber. I didn't know how attached he was to Germany in the 1930s. That was very interesting to learn. Learned about the Paris World Fair in Paris in 1937. That was pretty interesting. As well as about Union Station, some favorite spots of yours. So we'll be right back. We're going to listen to Apology off the album See You at 7 from the Stringers, and we'll be right back.
Conversations are happening in my state, and the only time I win fights are in my dreams. And the tracks, they held no bear on the train. No girl was being tied down, no hero to save the day. And I'll bet that you think nobody knows that the monster doesn't live in the closet. No, that's just where he keeps his clothes.
All right, thank you so much, the Stringers. So one thing I learned about was I had a favorite building that was removed, which was the old Ottawa, the Central Post Office.
Yeah.
That beautiful 3-story building where the War Memorial is right now.
Yeah.
So what was kind of your favorite building that you wish was not taken away?
The Quarry Block. It's a triangular building next to Union Station. And it's, a lot of people would have called it nondescript back then, but it's really something that completed the block between Union Station and what is now Colonel By.
Yeah.
That whole empty space we have with the overpass of the street going over top of the sidewalk that goes under, that was all buildings. And if you look at how Union Station is placed, it's at an angle. So it actually came after this building that I'm talking about, the Quarry Block, which was a triangle that kind of completed the space or filled the gap between the straight rectangles of the lots along Rideau Street and the bridge that crosses the canal. That was a funky building. I wish we could have it back.
And you talk about that in the book because it had the stores, it had storefronts, and it really connected because you're so right where that is that separation between kind of Elgin to Spark Street and Rideau Street, where you have that swath of land. And it's hard to go back because many other cities I've traveled to, they don't have the that kind of separation so close to downtown. And some people will forget about going to one end or the other, and you talked about how that was a connection, and people wouldn't feel a separation. It was just a flowing kind of...
Sure. I mean, when you think about it, and you mentioned Amsterdam in earlier conversation, I mean, the canal that we have here is really not that wide. So you can cross it on foot in the space of 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So 20 seconds is nothing, but I mean, if what takes you there and past there is something that has a lot of activity, then you don't really notice the gap. But if you clear out buildings and you increase the amount of emptiness, between Rideau Street and Colonel By, and when you get to the canal, there's a lot of, empty space for one, and facades that are not talking to you for two.
Yeah, there's just a few busts of...
you're starting to see some effort at reclaiming that space, but it's not structurally something that'll pull you up, and you're going up a hill there, so you need to be pulled up. Otherwise, why would you, right? It's too much of an effort to cross it.
That's very interesting. And you talk a lot about, and I've learned that you love kids playing on the streets, kids being kids, not inside on their iPads and watching TV. And we had such beautiful tree. I can't get over. And he said he wanted to make the city greener, Greber, but you made the point we were, like, look at those trees and
we were pretty green. I mean, in the report it says somewhere that, if you look at Ottawa from the air, it looks like a park. And then he goes on to say, but you still need more green space. And I just don't get that. I mean, we ended up with a lot of streets losing
then you
tree
wanted
canopy,
parking lots
right?
everywhere.
Yeah.
So it kind of went against each other.
And again, I mean, it's that principle of separation. You had streets that had vertical greenery, which is the best in summer because it shades you.
Yeah.
And
beautiful.
We lost all that, and we have horizontal greenery that stretches distances between one thing and the next. And oftentimes they tend to be either empty because they're too big, or empty because they're gaps. They're not spaces. And if they're planned as gaps, they will be gaps. So there's no such thing as residual space in the city. Every square centimeter of soil in the city has a purpose, and if it doesn't, well, it'll end up as a gap. Mm-hmm. And that mentality of using space as separator or as buffer is really a city killer. You don't build cities that way. You build cities bringing things together.
Yeah, you make the great points about Dundonald Park and Bintle Park. I live in Centertown, so I love those parks, and I hope Dundonald is still going to continue to be great. I know the beer store does want to help out with that and make it so it's continues to be a desirable place, because for the past 2 years of construction, it's been getting tons of people out there on during the day, and that's what I want to see more of. But yeah, when you drive around to these large open fields, sure, they're technically green space, but nobody's using them. And it, like you said, you have to drive to these parks, and that's not community. That's not meant to.
Either that, or you have to drive past it because it's too big.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
you're not going to even walk through it.
There's a lot of things I think that we don't think about questioning today, but when you really stop to think about it, is it really serving us the way we want? Is it creating the types of places that we want? The types of public realm that we're going to fall in love with, and those are valid questions.
In you work in the urban planning, are we seeing more scrutinization of developments, new developments, or making those green spaces more utilizable, or do you have discussions of what can we do to make these more useful? Or
well, yes to both. I mean, I think we've made strides in Ottawa since amalgamation for sure, and in recent years, in taking a much more long, hard look at urban design and at how spaces work. But it's an ongoing discussion. It always is. I mean, a city is never finished. So you keep learning.
Yeah. And so we have the official plans now and the community development plans. And a lot of this came about because in the 1930s, they were just playing it as it goes. Like there wasn't as much planned out development. So and it's always a learning process. People can be upset, but the city is starting to really allow further discussion between the citizens and the city, citizens and even NCC. I know I've been to several of the discussions at NCC. One of the last ones was the what to do with the Ottawa River, because you make the excellent point about the the Greber wanted to have those freeways where they're going fast, and it doesn't allow anybody